About the game of life and the hero's journey we all experience. Let's jump in with our host, Dylan Watkins, as he introduces today's guest.
What up, young adventurers? And on today's podcast, I have John Watts. He has been a devotee of all things technology since getting his first Commodore Amiga as a young boy. Movies like The Lawnmower Man spurred a fascination with virtual reality that continues to fuel his imagination, one which he feels lucky to be able to indulge in modestly professionally ways with his small virtual reality arcade in Inverness. Scotland. So I apologize about that. As one of the admins for several of the largest VR Facebook groups, John feels fortunate to have been part of the influencing the discussions in the industry for the past half decade. For 15 years, John has enjoyed success as an entrepreneur in sales and marketing for the LBE, otherwise known as location-based entertainment, and in restaurant industry, with a introspective that life is too short to waste doing anything you don't love. John is now working on opening the first LBVR venue in the Highlands of Scotland. So without any delay, I'd like to welcome John.
Hey, Dylan. How you doing?
Good, brother. Good to see you, man. Good to connect. Yeah, yes, definitely super excited to chat with you all things virtual reality, all things metaverse, and also Facebook. So I'm excited, and thank you for staying up late, dude. I know you're for me on the far East Coast, technically in Scotland, so it's a bit late for you.
Yeah. Or early, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. I remember I had you come in to beta test our game. We're playing with you.
Yeah.
You and Andy, man, and I look over at your setup, man, and then you get into this full-on Ready Player One rig, strap into the system, got the shoes on, and then you're just sprinting full sprint ahead, and I was like, uh-oh, I think Andy's in trouble.
Yeah, I don't even know it's my competitive side, which I do have, but I think probably more than anything, it's just the excitement of anything technology, and VR specifically is, I don't know, like you were saying when you were reading my bio out at the beginning there, it's like every teenager's dream who grew up in the 80s and 90s. You watch movies like The Lawnmower Man and, wow, maybe one day I'll have equipment like that. Maybe I'll be able to do that in my lifetime. And so the moment it's actually available and you can actually get your hands on it, it's like, let me at it.
And it's incredible because like the technology went from being complete fantasy to like commonplace. Yeah, I mean, as you know, like like it was, roll back the clock 7 years. I mean, this was not a thing. There was no store. There was no headsets anywhere. You couldn't even get a hold of them. I remember like craving this secret headset that only a couple of people had access to called the Vive, right? And it was so amazing. You had to like beg for to get the headsets.
Rim scale and
you could walk around. You mean you're not strapped to your computer and you can't like just only face your computer and have one directional tracking. So it's evolved really quickly. And I'd love to learn for you, what was that like mind-blowing moment that got you into virtual reality? What kicked things off for you?
Well, I think it was inevitable anyway. I think the moment that I was going to have the option to try it, then that was going to be it. The first time I actually got to try a VR headset, I think it was the DK1. It could have been the DK2, probably around 2013, and it was a traveling software expo, and they had an Oculus Rift, and it was being demoed with Alien Isolation, and it was running really poorly. You know what the resolution was like on the DK1 as well. I tried it for like 10 minutes. I think I turned green. I almost threw up there and then, and I loved it. It was like, let me at it. Give me more.
Yeah, it's so funny, man. Very similar experiences I had with Zelda when I first tried it, where I was incredibly sick and I loved it. And I was like, bring me more. Oh man. So then you tried it, and you from that point you knew you were into it. What was the points leading from there? DK1 days, which is the development kit one, the original Oculus. previously the artist formerly known as Oculus. What was the journey like from that first mind blowing experience to actually creating your own VR arcade?
Well, I think a defining part of my personality is part of the fact that I have ADHD, and
Mhm.
there's this tendency to fixate on things that are very interesting, like craving dopamine. What is it that's going to excite me? So, from the moment of VR headsets being on the horizon, following people like Palmer Luckey, I was sitting on my computer or iPad and like searching all the time. What's coming next? When's this coming out? What are the latest developments? So I think the first step was having in mind exactly when they were going to be released. So I was straight on the bandwagon with ordering the Oculus Rift, the PSVR, and from there really just couldn't get enough of it. After that, I decided, I really love this. It actually excites me. How can I turn my passion for this into something that I can make a living from as well? So that kind of
Mhm.
brought me to the next stage of thinking about VR arcades. Sharing it with other people as well is every bit as much of a driver for me as making a living from doing it. I think when you enjoy something that much, it's great to share it with other people and let them see as well.
There is a magic when you share the tech with people,
Yeah.
and they
Hmm.
try on the headset for the first time, and they're like, "Wow, this is
Yeah.
possible." There's a magic, you're
There
almost like
is.
because
Mhm.
you feel like you gave them that gift, which is
Yeah.
really, really cool. Um,
And
mm,
I also think it's a big responsibility to make sure that when someone tries VR for the first time, they have a positive experience from it. Because we both know how easy it is for a first experience to be ruined by nausea. It wasn't going to deter you or I, but people often come with the preconception that this could make me sick. And
mhm.
actually, it's very easy to avoid someone feeling sick if you're careful about what kind of experiences you let them try. So I kind of feel that weighs on me, that I have this responsibility to make sure that when I'm demoing it or showing it to customers, that they actually enjoy themselves, they don't feel sick, and they want more rather than leaving feeling like they're going to be sick.
Yeah, yeah, I guess what are some tips for people not getting sick when they're first going into the VR experience?
I think one of the things I've learned is the customer knows what they want, but they don't always know what's right for them. And so, for example, like the omnidirectional treadmills, they're brilliant. I love them, and I'm convinced that a lot of places that use them don't have them set up right. I've seen bad reviews for them, and I think a lot of it's based around the fact that they're maybe not calibrated properly. But if you go straight on to any VR experience and it's smooth motion, then if before you have any tolerance for that, it's very easy to make someone feel sick. So for me, I think number one is if someone's trying VR for the very first time, static games are definitely the way to go. So where all the action is happening around you, things like synth riders, like Beat Saber, um, like Space Pirate Trainer, um, all these games where you're not using a thumbstick to move around. Brilliant. After that,
Mhm.
games that will let you to begin with move around by teleporting. I've watched it so many times where I'll tell someone to start off, they've never done it before, try and move around by teleportation or try and do on the static games. And you just see them push that forward motion on the thumbstick or try and turn their avatar to the right, but at the same time they look to the left. And it's just their vestibular sense just goes whoosh.
Mm.
And next thing you see them, it's always a telltale sign of the heavy breathing. You'll see them kind of going, and are you okay? I was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. And it's that urge because they're having a good time, just to ignore it, and it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. So what I think what I've learned as well is when a customer comes in and they're quite adamant that they want to try walking in VR, they want to try smooth motion, to pretty strongly encourage them towards starting out on a base level with the game where their avatar isn't moving smoothly through the world and they're starting statically.
Yeah, man, that is so important. Yeah, getting people comfortable and babysitting them
Yeah,
in, because there's that lag effect. There's that delayed effect. If you're a little sick now and you're still in VR, it's gonna continue on. You know what
exactly.
I'm talking about? It's like 15 minutes later, it's gonna really pick up speed. So if you're feeling a
Yeah,
little bit, you want to
uh-huh.
stop. You want to like
Yeah,
stop and like let them roll through that.
yeah.
Um, have you seen the benefits of, like, sitting versus standing, or is it primarily just letting the
Um, I don't know that I I think the closer you can be to the position that your avatar would be in, the better. I think, that dysphoria between what your body's doing and what your eyes are telling you your body's doing, I think is a major problem. Um, I don't know that I've specifically kind of really noticed the difference.
yeah,
Most of the games I use involve standing anyway. Um, I do have a motion simulator for doing sim racing. Um, and usually, again, I find with that, I won't throw someone straight into I won't even throw them straight into VR in it. Actually, I'll have them get used to the motion and get used to driving it with the screens, and then move into VR the second part of their session. Because if they start off in VR and they just get that twinge of nausea, it's too late. It's just going to keep building. Once it's been triggered, it's almost like there's no turning back. So
yeah,
you want to build people up slowly, and it's amazing how everyone uses the term getting your sea legs, and they talk about VR legs. It's amazing how quickly you become used to it. And I don't know whether there's any real scientific data to back this up, but it seems to me an awful lot of the time when that nausea is triggered, if someone pushes through it for too long and too hard, next time they come, it's almost worse and happens right away. Whereas if they get to that point and then they stop, it's almost like going to the gym, right? They get to that point and then they stop. Next time they can do a little bit more. And that just kind of building people up slowly seems to work really well.
yeah. When I mean, you're curating and you're guiding the experience for people. I mean, you're a
Yeah.
caretaker of their experience, and it's
Hmm.
also they're very sensitive, right? And
Yeah.
there's ways to have a lot of fun and also have a really thrilling adventure without
Yeah.
necessarily getting sick. I know one of the things that I've seen you promote a lot, and some of the things that you've done is phantasmophobia. Um, do you
Phasmophobia. Yeah.
Phasmophobia,
Yeah.
yeah. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of like,
So
uh
it's a game I tried myself, and I right away I thought, what's great with this game is that you have to work together as part of a team, and you have to work together with other players. Um, I really want to be able to do this in an arcade setting and share it with other people. At the same time, the major obstacle to it is it's quite a long learning curve as a game compared to other games that people use in an LBVR setting. So I thought, how can I get around that learning curve and make it actually manageable for people to learn it? Because if you look around at other arcades, very, very few of them will use it. And part of that, I think, is because it's very staff intensive in teaching people how to play. So I license it directly from the Steam Cyber Cafe program, because you won't see it on either Synthesis or on the Springboard platform, but for the reasons I was just mentioning. Um, One of the things I do to get people into that game is I send them YouTube videos, instructional videos on how to play it, which combats an awful lot of the learning curve, because they're having to work out all these complex things about gathering evidence and what to do, as well as actually learning the controls. So I only book it when it's a longer VR session. I won't book it if someone's coming for an hour, because I feel they spend too much of their session learning to play it. So people book specifically to come and do that. It'll be an hour and a half session. There'll be a half an hour introduction of learning what all the evidence means, learning the controls. I'll make sure that they play the first game with just teleportation, even if they insist they want smooth motion. Um, because it always goes wrong if they decide to want the smooth motion. And I'll just kind of gradually build them up. And I've actually found that I've had repeat customers from it. So people will come, they will learn it. By the
mhm.
end of their session, most people leave really, really into it, and they want to come back for another one. They want to bring their friends and show them as well. And I really think that's what a lot of it is about. It's about being able to share it with people, like the social experience of VR. There's so many people look at it as being something that's isolating that you're doing on your own. You're putting this headset on, but that's not what it's about. It's about sharing it with other people.
Yeah, that sharing the experience is magical, and the Phantasmophobia. Maybe I'm saying that wrong, but
That's more, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
great game that is
Hmm.
about ghost hunting, and you go into a ghost
Yeah,
hunting environment, and you got to solve it with your friends, and then ghosts come out and they
yeah.
chase you down, and it can be terrifying, even though there's
It
not a lot
can.
happening inside of there.
Yep.
Like I remember losing you guys when I was inside of there, and like I was on the second floor, and you guys like I think I lost my flashlight and I lost you guys, and I was just like, I was like, guys, where's everybody at? And I had that terror of
Yep.
being trapped in a haunted house with and I'm like, I know I'm in a VR game. I know I can just take off my headset, but there's a
Yep.
sheer it's simple and it's terrifying.
To,
It's incredible.
to someone who hasn't played it, it's almost hard to explain.
Yeah.
But I, I'm an aficionado of horror movies. I love everything in the horror genre. And I love VR obviously as well. Um, Movies don't scare me. I don't go away and have nightmares. I can watch anything. My wife, who's probably watching just now, more than once I've caused her nightmares from making her watch horror movies, which I'm sorry for, kind of. Um, but all the best horror movies or anything that's really good in the horror genre, it's very much a case of less is more. And
Yeah.
movies that show you too much aren't scary. You just have to look at Ridley Scott's original Alien movie. You barely see the alien the whole way through. All it is that motion detector and the beep, 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 beep. And I think Phasmophobia does an incredible job of creating this really tense, really atmospheric environment that you can feel immersed in.
And that's the power of the thing is that, and then that shared experience. I mean, I think a
Yep.
lot of people go to VR arcades to have shared
Yep.
experiences with people
Yep.
and the groups of people. I know some people, like we say here, Andy says that my bank manager thinks that John and his VR toys are a bad influence on him. So
Andy doesn't know he's the subject of a bet that I will mention a new gadget or a new bit of technology to him, and I kind of have little wagers as to whether he'll go out and buy it. I think I've had him buy four, maybe four or five new
yeah.
gadgets now. Yeah,
Well, the thing is that if when things are amazing in VR, then you want to have them, right? Like I'm
yep,
still waiting for that, that lightweight, like eye tracking, and like
yeah,
in an
yeah.
easy to use system is very powerful because you want to talk about how much data you can get and give with that,
Oh,
and
yeah,
like a VR MMORPG, free world game where you can interact with avatars and they can tell if you're
yeah.
looking or you're
Amazing.
looking away, or that kind of stuff. Like there's so many wonderful things that like it's like you have these things like you're like shut up and take my money. What was the
Oh,
last
absolutely.
for you? What was the last shut up and take my money moment?
For me,
Yeah, for you.
um, I think probably. Do you want to see? I can grab from behind me. I think probably for me,
Oh,
the last shut up and take my money moment were pro were the Pro Volvers made by ProTube.
oh,
Amazing company, by the way. I I had a I had very early release models, and I had a minor problem, and they were so quick in helping me. But so these are the Pro Volvers, and very simple. These are ones that take a valve index controller,
mm-hmm,
but they also have ones for the Oculus touch controllers,
mm-hmm.
and I'm not sure if they have one for the Vive ones or if they were still working on that. But they're very simple. They work with almost any game. They don't need native integration, and they recoil when you pull the trigger. So when you shoot your weapon, you get a kick back from it. Really simple, really subtle, but the difference it makes in the feeling of immersion when you're playing just a simple shooter game is incredible.
That's what I was curious about. A little bit of haptics, the
Yep,
sense of touch goes a
yep,
long way. So I'd be,
yep.
yeah. I was wondering, do you feel like it increases your ability to like perform in an esports game or anything like that, or
No,
is it
no.
just sheer entertainment value?
I think it's sheer entertainment value.
Okay.
I know people that use gun stocks,
Mm,
so ProTube also make gun stocks. I know they do an awful lot for accuracy once you get used to them, but I've
And it,
never cared about being competitive so much as just having fun and feeling like I'm there.
yeah.
That's the driver for me. I mean, so like I have the Simbr set up here that I have people come and use. It's got motion on it. It's got
When you
artificial
say
wind.
when you're saying Simrig, what you're talking about, just so we can just describe to people that don't understand, is you're referring to an actual if you go to like an arcade, right? You'd sit down with one of those old school race cars, right? And you'd have
Yeah,
like a steering wheel that you could drive onto. But this is a much more advanced version, right? With all of like
right.
the
So
haptics and the feelings and the wind.
so a metal frame cockpit, which
Mhm,
was actually mostly custom built,
mhm,
because I wanted it built strong enough that it had no given it at all. A friend of mine did it for me out of sheet steel. So you're sitting basically in a chair. There's a metal frame for a cockpit because you're in VR. What's it matter what it looks like from the outside? You have your racing wheel, so force feedback wheel, pedals, gearbox, handbrake, and all that stuff. Yes, that increases performance, having a good wheel and especially having good brakes. But on top of that, I have transducers, I have motion, I have artificial wind. None of them make you a better racer, not one bit. Like nobody that's winning world championships esports racing is using things like artificial wind. It just makes it fun.
yeah.
It makes it feel more like you're there.
Well, and that depth of immersion. Like right
Yeah.
now, the virtuality headsets, as they are really, really good at simulating visual and
Hmm.
auditory. What they don't do really good is haptics, the sense of touch, right? And so what you're
Yep.
talking about right there is you really put them inside that little sense of motion, the feedback of the steering wheel, the
Yeah.
force feedback, and then also what you're talking about transducers, which are basically kind of like speakers without the sound that kind of make the vibration, right? So they,
Right.
yeah.
What's what makes them a little different is they're not just linking up to the sound output of the
Mm,
computer, they're actually using their own independent software. So
mm.
although it's a low intensity vibration, it's not, if you have just a noise of a car passing, you're not feeling a vibration. It's actually relating to the engine revving or to a bump in the road. And again, it does nothing to make you a faster racer. It just makes it fun.
Just
It
your
makes it
just
feel like you're doing it. Yeah.
just your joy. What
Yeah.
like can you talk to me about like so the types of people that come to the VR arcade? What are the groups of people that get the most enjoyment that you see on a regular basis come through your virtual reality arcade?
I have quite a big mix, a
Yeah.
lot of different age groups. So obviously, quite high up on my customer list are kids coming for birthday parties.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about this before. That's like a major demographic. Parents parents coming with their children as well.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of 30 somethings, 40 somethings coming with their 12, 13, 14-year-old kids.
Yeah.
Um, the demographic I have the least of, and it's actually one of the most fun groups to do an experience for, our teenagers.
Oh
And I
yeah.
have lots. I have lots of thoughts as to why, like maybe being more independent, being away from the parents, yet maybe not having transport or money to go and do things. Um, but it, they seem very much not afraid to scream or be terrified. By the time you're like a grown man, people can become a little bit. Some people can become a little bit repressed.
Mhm.
Afraid to show that they're actually scared. Oh, that didn't bother me. Like I wasn't scared by that ghost that just jumped out at me. Whereas the teenagers I have playing, they'll scream.
Yeah.
Like they'll get trapped in a house in a game like Phasmophobia, and they'll just let out this almighty scream, and everyone gets a buzz out of it. Everyone in the group enjoys watching each other being scared. So that's one of the groups I enjoy most.
That's so fun, and I could imagine that, when you're talking about, parents and kids, like,
Yeah,
they're probably the parents are kind of reliving their childhood a bit with the
yeah.
kids, like, they get to play together and have those connections. What are experiences you like to put, like, families through? Are there certain ones that you'd they like to typically go through and do together?
I very much try and stick to the really simple experiences. So I've talked about games like Phasmophobia; they're more in depth. But when people are coming to do VR for the first time, and they're coming in a family, you want to try and aim for stuff that everyone can enjoy, that there's not this barrier to get into play, that there's a huge learning curve where they've got to work out what all the controls are. So one of my go-to games actually at the moment is a game called Synth Riders. I don't know if you've played that one or tried that one out.
A little bit. I tried it only for a couple of minutes.
Really well executed. Similar in style to a lot of other rhythm games like Beat Saber, but the learning curve is very short. 2 minutes and people are away and they're playing. It's very intuitive. It has multiplayer as well. So like a parent with their child, they can get quite competitive, that they're trying to beat each other's score, and while they're in it they can see each other doing it too, so you can see them looking out the corner of their eyes trying to watch what the other player's score is. The other thing I love about games like that are, I've always tried to aim for this kind of high-end experience and to give people stuff that they won't have at home, because I think more and more people are having headsets in their house now. More and more people are buying things like the Oculus Quest. We've got the PSVR 2 coming out, and I think it's almost short-sighted to rely on the stock games that eventually everyone are going to have at home. So games like Synth Riders use the Haptics suits as well. Mm-hmm. So you can let people experience that rhythm game, but also have the haptic feedback too. Something probably most people aren't already going to have at home. And a lot of my customers and a lot of people that come are people that already own their own VR headsets and want to try something that's a little bit more kind of high-end or engaging.
Well, see, that's an interesting topic where you're talking right there, is because back when I got started, not everybody had a VR headset. So
no, exactly.
It's something that's, it's more, and you said, it's a bad maneuver to rely on just the VR headsets themselves being entertaining and stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think are some things like, what advice would you give to people that are looking to open up their own VR arcades or things like that they may not see coming? Because some people are like, oh, this is great, I just opened up a shop, it's super fun, I get to play games all day, which is probably not untrue. But what do you think are some things that you've learned along the way that were lessons that might be beneficial to other people?
Well, number one, don't do it in the Highlands of Scotland. It's a terrible business. You'll never make a living. No one will come. Other than that, I think there are different models of business. Yeah. I think really following what you enjoy is really important. I think if you're enthusiastic about it, that will shine through, and people will see, if you're enjoying sharing it with them, that will give them a buzz as well. So don't do something just for the sake of doing it because you think it's going to be lucrative on its own. Your passion will also sell it. So if you can't be passionate about it, then you're not going to make your customer feel passionate about it. So I think it can be very different depending on what you specifically enjoy. So like I see a lot of people just now doing this time of night in my brain, a lot of the arena games with quests where they're free roaming, and absolute respect to these games, to the software, to people who are doing them. It's not my thing. So I've stayed away from that because I'm not going to get excited by doing it. I'm going to get excited by sharing the high-end experiences. So I think like doing what you feel passionate about really matters. After that, I think listen to your customer, but don't listen to them too much, because probably you know more about what they're going to enjoy than they do. And they're very often going to try and push their kids towards something that they think will be good, that possibly their kid won't enjoy. So I think almost any VR arcade owner would agree with me that you quite often have parents that are anxious for their kid to try everything, or if they see them playing a game that maybe they think as a parent they wouldn't enjoy, they try and direct their kid away from it into something else. But if that child or the customer is enjoying the game they're playing, leave them on it. They're not getting any pleasure out of switching from one game to another, to another, to another. Let them just enjoy the experience. And I think that's kind of a primary thing.
That's interesting. It's almost like micromanaging their fun. you
It
know?
is, yeah. Listen
Yeah,
to them, but
yeah.
kind of nudge them to where you know they're going to have a good time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, for the parent is micromanaging the kid's fun, trying to get them to move around from
Yeah,
spot to spot to
right.
spot, right?
Hmm.
And you're like, hey, man, just laissez-faire, let them have a good time, take your hands off, and let them go in that direction, and then kind of understanding what you're interpreting their needs, right? You're like saying,
Yep,
oh, I see what you're saying. You want them to have a great time. You want them to laugh and play. I've got a
yep,
great game for you. Let me serve you up something that you'll truly
exactly.
enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something to the deeply immersive stuff, I think, that is really, um, you can lose yourself in. It becomes
you
magic,
can.
right?
Yep.
At a certain level of the tech. Um, it Along the notes of this, I would love to see if, like, talk to me a little bit about how you got started with the VRcade. You talked about, fast forward past the Amiga, fast forward
Right.
past getting trying out the Aliens game, and being terrified and sick.
Yep.
What was the really the build up to you going, just being an enthusiast, to actually going, you know what, I'm going to open up my own place and actually be able to have it, use this to make a living on
Well, for me, the first part of it was I'm going to do this slowly and in my own time.
it. Mhm.
I started off doing just little mobile events, kids parties, bookings for a couple of people, because I really wanted to learn the equipment firsthand and learn what worked and what didn't work. Um, you hear in almost any business, people will have tips that they'd like to go back and tell their past self. Don't waste your money on this. Don't do this. Don't do this. And it's so easy to go head on into something and have spent all your money and think, damn, if only I'd done it this way, it would have been much better. I should have bought this equipment. So I wasn't actually in the position at the time to gamble. So I bought a couple setups, started doing kids parties, and I learned kind of how I wanted to do it. And what I decided was I already had a business that made me a good living. I wasn't going to fold that and put my family's income at jeopardy and just suddenly move into something else. I was happy doing what I did. It made me a good living. So I started doing it just as a weekend business,
Mhm.
a few hours every weekend. And my focus was on building up a local following, getting repeat customers, getting my name known. I spent a lot of time making adverts, on promoting my Facebook page. And I think it was all very organic, that it gradually built, and everything's been a steady progression. So I'd gradually get more equipment. Eventually, I decided back in May 2020, which was really lousy timing, that I was about ready to open a
Yeah.
7-day a week LBVR venue. I bought a lot of equipment. I had a couple good options on a premises, and I'd kind of set a date for the beginning of May that I was planning on having that open. And of course, we all know what happened early 2020. It happened to all of us. So I suddenly found myself in a situation where I had all this VR equipment. Lockdown clearly seemed to be going on longer than anyone anticipated. What do I do? It's going to devalue. It's going to get older, potentially become out of date, that it's going to need updating. Do I sell it? If I sell it, do I ever get back into the position of, or any time in the near future, do I get back into the position of being able to attempt to do this again after lockdown's over? So in the interim period, I decided, you know what? Once lockdown lifts, I'm going to do this on a small scale. And I built a cabin specifically for doing VR in, and thought this is a great way of keeping the social media side of things going, keeping a bit of a local buzz, getting a following that people are talking about me. So the VR cabin that I built, I'm actually sitting in right now, it only has 4 VR stations. So, I'm sure there are somewhere, but I don't know of any VR arcades that are smaller. I think probably the only people who are smaller operators are people who maybe have a cafe and have a couple of VR stations in it. But most of the people I see on arcade owners communities are minimum of 8 stations.
Mhm.
But what worked great with this through we're not in the post-COVID period, but in the post-lockdown period, was it allowed me to do bookings with single parties without high rental costs, without staffing costs, without families worrying about who they were mixing with and what other people they were seeing and whether they were going to catch COVID. And it let me continue to build up interest so that I'd hopefully be in a position to springboard into opening a larger venue when I felt secure enough to do that.
So that's a cool move. I mean, that's a way to pivot in it. I mean, the whole thing got flipped on its head. I mean, I'm someone who I have my virtual reality game that's in a whole bunch of the arcades throughout the U.S. and stuff, and we were doing really
Yeah.
well with that. And then, I watched these minutes. I know that Springboard went from doing 4 million minutes, I think 4 million minutes a month, to like 1,000 minutes.
Yeah.
Because everything just got shut down, and then everyone just kind of goes, okay, now what? So you built a cabin, and you were able to actually put these in. It almost feels like a VR speakeasy or something.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like a
Exactly.
secret
Yep.
knock on the door. You got to have a certain password. And then what's cool about that is you made it intimate, you made it private, and then you took all these things of like, it's taking the challenges that would happen, during the time, and actually converted it into something that could actually serve you, and you can kind of still build momentum and move things along versus having to shut down entirely. It's cool that you found that third option, which I don't think a lot of arcades did.
Middle ground. Yeah, there are a lot of people who I wouldn't say just luck, but a lot of people who are very careful and had a good business plan that managed to survive. A lot of the biggest arcades were the ones that seemed to be hit the hardest, the ones with the massive running costs. And sadly, some spectacular venues went under. But there were an awful lot of people who didn't survive. And a great many of them, through absolutely no fault of their own, there's nothing they could have done or foreseen to have changed things. It was just something no one could have anticipated.
Yeah. And that's one of those things with being in the business is that you're building your own village, you're building your own place, right? And whatever happens that affects that a village, it's on you, right? You can't control the environment around you, but you're trying to build this thing. What's great, you have your own freedoms, right? You quote unquote play games for a living, right? And and which is wonderful. But then the challenges are when those things happen.
I work.
I work.
I work at playing games.
I was on the East Coast visiting my family for the holidays last year, and my niece and nephew, they're like 7 and 9 years old, and I was hanging out there, but I was working remotely, so I was in the spare room working away, and then I had to meet up with my client where I was working on developing my game, and they would knock on the door, and my brother was like, "Hey, you can't bug him. You got to leave him alone. He's working." And they're like, "He's not working. He's playing. I can hear him in there. He's playing. He's laughing. I want to play too." And they're like, "That is not fair." And it's like, but you choose what you go into, and it can look glorious from the outside, but people don't understand the underbelly things that you have to put up with, trying to make these things happen. So like, what are some of these, can you talk to me about like these struggling moments, right? And kind of like how you were able to kind of overcome, or what were, a moment in time that you're just, okay, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. And then you're able to pivot.
I think for me personally, the biggest struggles through the recent period with COVID were financial. And of course, being trapped at home, and mental health, my wife's mental health is chronic migraines, my children who are both autistic, and them becoming almost housebound. But I found myself in a position where between me and my wife, we had 3 good income revenues, but they were all dependent on first-person contact with people. So our income basically just vanished overnight. I don't know what it was like for you in the US, but a lot of the help from the government here was based around your last few years of earnings. And so while I have 17 plus years of self-employed tax returns in, my last couple of years, I've been investing heavily in VR equipment. So my net looked like next to nothing. So it's like, okay, well, you weren't making much profit the last couple of years anyway. So no help for you. So the worry of how am I going to survive? How am I going to pay the bills? And it's not something I would have survived if I wasn't fortunate enough to have a lot of family around us who helped us. But I think that those things all combining together were like a perfect storm, basically.
And that's, I mean, it's no joke, but that's real talk, man. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a challenge, right? And unless
yeah,
you come together as a family and as a support group to be able to make it, I mean, no one expects something to happen and then all of a sudden you can't talk to people, right? And that
right.
and that hits you in so many different areas. And then but figuring out how do you cope, and that mental health thing was huge. So many people went into holes like, oh, this is great, I have time off.
Yeah,
And then inserts all the stuff that they do to try to pass the time. And then
yeah,
it seems like a great idea. It's like if you have a day off, and you're like, oh, I'm just gonna binge watch Netflix all day. It seems like a great idea in the moment, but later in that you kind of feel weird because you haven't moved, you haven't stretched, you haven't gotten anything out of your system, and you feel all crunchy. So
yeah.
yeah. So what about, like, when you talk about the mental health? I mean, did going into VR help with the mental health, or what did you talk to me about ways that you were able to kind of keep resilience with that?
Well, it did actually. It's funny, despite my fascination with with VR and tech and all these things, I actually spent very little time playing it myself. Um, I showed it to other people. I think I have as much of a fascination with the technology and making everything work and setting things up as I do with actually playing stuff. But I found during lockdown, at first, you're a little bit isolated, but then I found myself becoming quite reclusive. Um, I, I'm generally or historically quite a social person, but I think as I started to struggle with my own mental health of being cut off, I think I stopped reaching out to friends as much and actually talking to them. I think I found myself at one point with probably 10, 15 plus messages from friends in my messenger account. And for whatever reason, I just hadn't replied to them. And I'd like to think they know me well enough to know that none of that was ever personal. It was that I was struggling to a point where I just really couldn't face talking to people. And, the fact that someone might ask me, how are you doing? Are you okay?
Yeah.
I neither wanted to lie, nor did I really want to get into it and tell them the truth. So I just kind of avoid talking about it. With regards to VR, that's actually probably when I started playing a little bit more myself. And I think the social side of meeting friends and playing online. So, like we've played a couple of games. I played regularly with Andy, who's I think still watching just now. Hey, Andy. A friend of mine, Sasha, I've been playing with more recently.
Hmm.
Those meetups online and playing games together, I think kept me sane. It was that little bit of social interaction. And that's the power of VR. You actually feel like you're there with people. It's more involving, it's more engaging than just a telephone call. You're doing something together as well as talking.
Mm.
Oh, the part my son typing in there.
Yeah. And you're right. It's beyond typing. It's one of the best forms of interaction. It's not the same thing as a video chat where we can chat,
No, it's not.
but you can play together. You can
Yeah,
play together, which is magic. You can run around, play in tag, you can get scared together. And there is a bit of the mental health in that, but the not talking to people. And I've been in that situation where, like, something bad happens in business, you don't want to talk to people. It's
yeah.
like kind of like a
Hey, Joseph.
hey
I
guys,
had to quickly say hi to my son there. Hi.
hey,
He's watching, so he said hello repeatedly.
what up, brother? Hey, Joseph, good to hear you, brother. Welcome to the party. Uh, but this thing, it hits, right, and
Yeah.
you don't want to talk to people, but
No.
it's weird because people think, oh, just positive mental attitude, oh, just do this, but they don't understand, like, you don't, it can jump on top of you, but also at the same time, like, like there's a power in being vulnerable where you feel connected. Like so many people want to have like everything's going great, everything's awesome, but nobody really connects with that. Nobody connects with that as much as being
No, they
real.
don't.
You know?
Having a positive mental attitude is a good thing, but the concept of saying positive mental attitude is toxic. It doesn't fix people telling them you need to have a positive mental attitude. Do you know why? Because people's problems are real. They're deep. They're complicated. They're not just look on the bright side of life and things will get better. So I think there's it's a very complicated issue. It's
almost dismissing somebody. Do you know what I'm
it is.
saying?
You're right. Exactly.
Yeah, I'm hurting. I'm struggling. I'm in a tough situation. Just buck up. Have a strong
Yep.
upper lip. You're like, oh, screw you too, buddy. Like that's that feeling, right?
Yep.
That energy, and it doesn't. And because but at the same time, you don't want them to feel bad. But there's a fine balance of being there with somebody and sitting with
Yep.
them and making and letting them know that they're not alone.
Exactly.
Right?
Just listening.
Yeah, just listening, just being there with them, and sometimes people just want to be heard. Some people just want to be held. Some people just want to, and I've had some crazy conversations in virtual reality where you go deep with people, deep on these topics. And it's just having someone there with you. And I think that's one of the powerful things about the VR when you get in there and you can connect with people and have those conversations. Can you talk to me about, I mean, any of these social experiences you've had that will kind of stay with you? I mean, it could be that, or it could be something incredibly fun, or it could be that. What for you stands out to you as a memorable moment that you won't ever forget in VR?
I think all the memorable moments are with other people. I play very little in single player games. There are stellar experiences like Half-Life Alyx, which is just this incredibly immersive environment. But I still think, despite that probably being the benchmark of immersion in VR, it pales in comparison to doing something with someone else. So, laughing with someone else, being scared with someone else. I mentioned before briefly about, like me loving horror. I would never have a nightmare about a horror movie, but I will not play Phasmophobia on my own in VR. No. I play it on a screen, but you want to get me to go into the house? I'll play it on my own in VR. I won't do it. No way. And when if you think about that kind of, like, if you want to intellectualize it and think about that in isolation, the people I'm playing with aren't actually there. We're not going into a real house. There are no ghosts. However you look at it, whatever I'm doing, even if it was real, I'm still doing it on my own. I'm playing with people who aren't in VR themselves. They're just sitting at a mouse and keyboard, often in another country, and yet I feel like they're in there with me. So as soon as you put another player in there, it's like, it's cool. I'll do anything. I'm not scared of that ghost. But I won't do it. And that I think that speaks volumes to how powerful a medium VR actually is. That I feel like the people I'm doing it with are there with me. I feel like they're laughing with me. I feel like they're scared with me. And I think rather than one standout experience, I think all the experiences that involve laughing, being scared, and connecting with other people are all stand out. That's what makes it so amazing.
Yeah, man, it's totally right. And by the way, I totally thought the same thing. I've never thought about playing Phasmophobia and by myself. It's never been a thought where I'm like, I'm just gonna run around this place by myself and look. And it's funny because, like, I do know it's funny because there's this weird thing. Again, we talked about the dismissal, right? Because because the logical part of the brain is like, oh, it's just pixels on a screen. That's just digital. I can tell you what that is. I mean, you're just passing RPCs over the net. Like, there's just, logically speaking, it's just, but at the same time, emotionally, you want someone there with you. You want a battle buddy. You want to go arm and digital arm in it. It's because it's fun and it's funny and it's scary and there's those magic, there's those moments. But yeah, you're right. As soon as you said go in there by yourself, like, no, I don't want to do that.
No.
That sounds fun at all. It sounds terrible.
I mean, I've even been doing it where I've had to go in and like mess with settings for a party coming, And I've just been like going in on each machine, and I've just gone into the house and tested like that's tracking properly, that's gripping. And I can remember going into one of the houses, and like the second I went inside, I just heard this hiss, and I'm wearing the Haptics suit as well. So my heart, I could feel in the vest, go boom, boom, boom. I'm like, nope, 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 out of here. And it's broad daylight, and I'm like, I'm at home testing stuff out, and I'm like, nope, that's it.
I understand. There is no shame, even though we're both grown men technically. I'm gonna put air quotes over that one. It is. I completely could be completely acceptable because it is so easy to like. What's crazy about it is like you talk about like our reality, right? Like literally the VR, you can take over someone's reality and you can put them inside those worlds. I mean, you could slide down rainbows or you could hang out in the darkness. I mean, there's so much you can do that it will create your world. And I'm curious, like, I wonder if there's like a record time that people spent inside there, and how it shaped their brains like, in terms of psychological impact that VR has.
I have a friend who I know has played for 16 hours straight, with the exception of maybe bathroom breaks. I think that's pretty crazy.
That would make you start to dream that way, which I think is crazy. And I don't. I'm sure there's some psychological effects. That's one of the things I'd love to see. Is I'd love to see something that could kind of scan your brain at the same time when you're inside there to kind of see any type of psychological effects that it actually has on the brain. If you can actually enable, could you actually?
I know that there have been studies done regarding the formulation of memories in VR and how VR experiences, when you're forming long-term memories of them, they're very much the same, or they're very different to having watched a TV show. You remember almost autobiographically, like it's actually happened to you. I don't know all the specifics, but I know there's one or two studies being done on that.
Well, because I do have memories like when I remember playing with you, there's a couple times we played in different experiences. I don't remember me being in the room playing with you. I remember me being in VR with you at that house, at that temple, or the different places that we were at together. And so it is interesting because I do have those memories. Shifting the conversation just a little bit. So, and I don't know if you're free to talk about this or not. You've had some opportunities for expansion and some things you're going to be doing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Are you at liberty to talk about that at all?
I can talk about some of it. Probably some of it I have to be a little vague on. A good friend of mine, someone I also play online with. I don't know if he's watching just now or not, but he has a local simulator business. We've talked an awful lot, and I think an awful lot of it is foot traffic and attracting people in. And we've both got quite a good local social media following. So we're planning on actually opening a premises together, with the perspective that we're both stronger together. He'll drive traffic for me and I'll drive traffic for him. So that's kind of imminently on the horizon. We've been looking at properties now pretty steadily for quite a while and trying to find something where it's the right balance of space, location, parking, and not forgetting rental costs and rates and taxes. So hopefully, I mean, I'll actually know a little bit more just in the next few days. But hopefully we've actually found somewhere now, so that will see us, I would think, by the spring, being open in a new venue, which I'm really excited about, because I kind of feel it's time to sort of take the next step in terms of how many customers I can actually have at once, being able to do bigger parties. There's lots of experiences that I would love to be able to do with people that I don't have the space for at the moment. So that's kind of the next step for both of us. And I think it's also something that's lacking in the area that I live in. We have some great businesses, but so we have bowling alleys, we have mini golf, we have a trampoline park, we have a cinema that's been struggling like probably every cinema has. But there's nothing else kind of like this within the Highlands of Scotland. And I think being able to offer an entertainment venue that gives someone a completely different experience to what they've had before is sorely needed.
So it's awesome. There's a couple points you look at, and I completely agree with the philosophy that stronger together. Some people might look
Yeah,
at it as competition, but to be honest with you, like I used to own a gourmet food truck. And if
yeah,
you park one gourmet food truck out there, no one really stops. But if you had 5 or 10 of them out in a circle, you're gonna stop, right? Because it's
yeah.
bigger, it's more grand, it grabs your attention, and then also you can find those critical areas. I know with those types of things, I mean, you're looking for a big parking lot, you're looking for an intersection, you're
Yeah.
looking for certain times of days and spots like that. When you're thinking about like the rent and the location
Mhm.
and like the partnerships and things like that, what do you think are the most critical elements that if you just got those things right, everything else would work?
Well, we talked about this the other day actually, but I think location is important.
Yeah.
I, I would love to have visibility, but
Hmm.
visibility comes with a price in terms of rent. It also comes with a compromise, and the compromise is usually parking. Um, our kind of urban layout in the Highlands of Scotland is very different to most places I see in the US. So you have these great big retail parks everywhere,
Hmm.
or anywhere out of a major city, you have lots of retail parks. And we tend to have a city centre, and then we have out with the city centre. And if you're in the
Oh,
city centre, you're going to get loads of foot traffic, but parking's a pain in the neck. Um, if you do park, you're having to walk all the way across town, which isn't always friendly for families. So a big priority for me is parking. People being able to pull their car up outside and just come in with their family. Um, and because I know that with the premises and the types of premises we've been looking at, they're not going to have great visibility for people walking past. We're very dependent on generating local awareness,
hmm.
which is kind of what led us both to thinking we both actually already got really good local awareness anyway. All your customers are going to walk straight past my business. All my customers are going to walk straight past your business. There's the opportunity for us both to maybe have other revenue streams in terms of food, drink, a lounge area. It just works. I mean, it's at, people don't always think about it. They tend to view everyone as competition, but it's very tried and tested. You just have to look at like a cinema. Local cinemas right beside them. You're going to see a Pizza Hut, a McDonald's, a TGI Fridays, a Frankie and Benny's. See, why are all these restaurants opening right next to each other and right next to a cinema? Because they know people are going there to have fun. They're going there to eat. They're actually stronger together rather than being competition.
100%. And that's the thing. The people that realize if you can make allies through this whole thing, you
Yep.
can you can learn, you can grow, you can
Yep.
develop. I know the same thing for me, like VR developers. Some people go, oh, it's a threat. Oh, there's this. Oh, I can't share my ideas. Oh no, things are gonna happen. But when you operate in those vacuums, you miss out on all the gold of just
Yeah.
sharing information. It's like, hey man, have you thought about like painting that thing blue? Have you thought about tweaking that thing? And you get these
Yeah.
insights, you get that magic, and then you're all kind of like learning and growing together. And
Yeah.
that's the beauty of
and
all that
and
stuff.
and even on the larger, like the bigger picture, you're
Yeah.
making great experiences collectively. You're all driving more people into VR. You're
Yeah.
expanding. uh, One of the things that, and I won't mention any names, one of the things that bothered me early on with a big developer who had a game that I wanted to license was they were talking enormous licensing costs in the region of $30,000 to license for a year. And I tried to, like, I actually wrote them and explained the scale on which I was doing it. That it was only going to be a couple stations, and it was almost as though they didn't hear anything I said to them. And they then wrote back saying, "We offer these great competitive packages, and this is what it includes." It's like, okay, but wait, you want to license it to me in the Highlands of Scotland with a city population of around 35,000 for the same price as you want to license it to, and not even per station. Like, it was a set price, the same cost as a VR arcade with 100 stations in in New York City.
It's
It's
tone deaf.
not plausible for me.
Yeah, no, that
And
makes sense at all.
where I think that's short-sighted is by investing in me, the tiny little VR arcade owner, they're actually helping to increase their market size because they're going to help me grow into a bigger customer who will license more from them.
Well, and it's like they without even having a conversation with you, they shut you down, and it's like they're gonna get zero,
Hmm.
and it's just and versus they could make your business better, they could get money,
Yep.
it could be a win-win if they're only willing to have a
Yeah.
conversation. It's a very limited thing, but I think the way you're going about it to actually partner with somebody and actually work on saying, okay, how do we win together? How do we grow this is huge. Do you have like a holy grail for this? Like what you want to do ultimately? So let's just say you open up this new facility. Is there a certain flag in the mountaintop or some sort of goal you're trying to hit?
Yes, and it's not financial.
Okay.
It's not grandiose. It's not world domination. It's about it's about living a life that gives me good work-life balance, that I do something that I love, that I get to share my passion with other people, that I'm there for my family when they need me rather than miles away working all the time. It's about making something that's successful, that thrives, that yes, brings me in a really good income, that I can take care of my family the way they need, but it's about balance. So what I would like is to have a really successful local business that does all those things.
That's beautiful. Yeah, bringing balance back to the force, you
Yep.
know. That's it's a and then by the way, I mean, I think there's like the era. I mean, you might be a similar in my age, where
Yep.
like our previous generations, they just get rich,
I
have
think
a
I think we're
hard
about
life.
four. I think I'm about 4 years older than you. I think.
Maybe,
Pretty,
maybe.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Let's just say about that.
about
We
that,
don't need
yeah.
specifics.
I know. A lady never tells. No, so
Yeah.
it's but about the same age, but like our previous generations, that's what they're all about. And for us, it's more about like I love that, like doing what you're passionate about, sharing that passion, and
Mhm.
actually having it be thriving, but also being able to be there for your family at the same time, so that you
Yep.
can grow that and build it. I think that's a wonderful goal, and I think it's a great holy grail to have, and it doesn't necessarily be world domination to have value. What do you think is your if that's the goal, what is your dragon? What is the thing that is so difficult to overcome? You don't know if you're going to be able to do it when you're trying to achieve this holy grail goal.
For me, an awful lot of it is health. I, I'm athletic. I'm fit. I come from a sports background. I also have ME,
Mm.
and it's an invisible illness, and I find I have points where I'm just so fatigued that
What's
I
ME? I'm sorry.
um chro- uh, oh, it was frequently referred to as chronic fatigue, and
Okay.
for years it's been dismissed by physicians. It's only recently more widely acknowledged.
Okay.
Um, I think often it comes from not being able to explain why people are unwell, but in my case, it started after having glandular fever, which I think you just call mono in the US.
Oh
So
yeah,
which derives from the Epstein-Barr virus. So it started post-viral, um, and managing that, a lot of it involves avoiding the highs and the lows. So for me, it will be, I feel good. I've got energy just now. Oh my God, there's all this stuff I haven't done because I've been unwell. I've got to get it done. And I'll go flat out to try and accomplish everything in one go, floor myself, and then my energy levels plummet. I'm exhausted for about a week. I can't get anything done. I sit still. I feel better. I go flat out again. So it's this up and down and up and down cycle. And it's trying to temper that and trying to learn
yeah.
what my own limitations are. How much do I have energy for? And to manage that successfully. And that's something that I do with greater and lesser success at different points. There's often tipping points where anxiety becomes too much, family life and work becomes too much, and I push too far. And I think more than anything, I find that really frustrating because I have
Mhm.
this. I, I always have this drive to accomplish more, to achieve more, and not being able to do the stuff that I want to do really frustrates me.
I mean, it's makes a ton of sense, dude. That build and burn, like you're going, crash to the ground,
Yep.
and then your body falls apart, and then you lose
Yep.
that momentum, and then you
Mhm.
got to get that momentum back up, and you got to go
Yep.
through it, and then that's I mean, the struggle's real there, because I mean, you have to, running a business, being married, having kids, all that stuff. It's like
Yep.
it's a whirlwind of stuff where it
It
pulls you in
is.
all these directions,
Yep.
and then you forget to fill up your own cup, and you're filling up everybody else's cup, and then you're on empty, and then you
Right.
struggle, and then especially if you try to compensate with, like, I mean, I sometimes get into kicks where I have like these crazy things where I have to live off energy drinks, and then I'll go for like a week living off
Yeah.
energy drinks, and at the end I'm just like, I can't take it.
Yeah.
you crash to the bound. And so
It is, and
Hmm.
and the energy, that's something I've done. I've known at particular times I've really had to push, and I've really had to work hard, and the energy drinks for me always came with a price. It
Yeah.
was pushing myself beyond really what my body's telling me that I should be doing, knowing that what I'm doing is going to have repercussions in terms of my health later, and yeah, I think that's a major thing to try and avoid, but it's far easier said than done.
It is. It's it's so easy to find these like sayings online or other things like these, like, it's the same thing with dismissing the just positive mental attitude. Just go
Yeah.
through it. It's
Yeah.
because
Power
it takes
through.
you have to be able to actually find that thing, and also maintaining balance. That the trick is the maintaining balance part. And I think
Right.
but building your own business, if you can get enough momentum behind it, and they can start to, it's like turning a spark into a forest fire. It takes
Yeah.
so much energy to keep it going, but once it starts to pick up
Like
momentum.
critical mass. Yeah.
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 John, this has been absolutely wonderful. I know it's late for you, brother, but I want to ask you this: is there anything else you'd like to let people know about before you tell them how they can get a hold of you and how they can find your awesome location-based entertainment arcade facility?
Yeah. You can find me on, so it's terrible. I should actually know what my handle is for my business for Facebook. My business is called Inverness VR Experiences, or IVR. I'm in the Highlands of Scotland, so if you're in the Highlands of Scotland, I shouldn't be too hard to find on Facebook. Just drop me a message. So if you want to experience any high-end VR and you've not done it before, or even if you just want a little bit of advice or information, I'm always happy to help people who are trying to set up VR at home as well.
Beautiful, wonderful. So Inverness, if you're looking for that, INVERNESS. Search that for the Highlands of Scotland.
Not Inverness, Florida.
No.
No. Yeah.
So
I get that a lot.
Oh, you do? And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
could you come? Yeah, could you do a kid's birthday party over here? And it's like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're looking for entertainment, look for that. And then, and also, John, if they want to get a hold of you, again, how would they get a hold of you?
I'm easy to find on Twitter. And again, it's terrible, isn't it, when you can't remember things offhand? I think my Twitter is just my name, John SM Watts. So it's at John SM Watts. And I'm quite active and usually respond fairly quickly to anyone who messages me or contacts me.
That's awesome. John, absolute pleasure, brother. Thank you so much for coming
Likewise.
on the show. I appreciate
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Have a blessed and beautiful day, my friend, and I will see you on the other side. Take care now.
Good night. Thanks.
See you, brother.
Thank you for listening to the Heroes of Reality podcast. Check out heroesofreality.com for more episodes. While you're there, you can also take the Heroes quiz to find out what kind of hero you are. Or, if you have a great story and want to be on the podcast, tell us why your hero's journey will inspire others. Thank you for listening. See you on